Good morning, everybody. I know there's a few people joining, but we better start because this subject could go on for a long time, and an hour is probably not going to do it justice. My name's Mark Tadman. I'm one of the directors at School Business Services, and myself and Jeff Marshall have been working for a long time together, and this is one of the subjects that we're really most fascinated by, single academy trusts, what the future is and how we can discuss it with like-minded colleagues for the benefit of the schools. And also we've got Kerry Hart joining us as well today, I'm delighted to say. And as I say, today is about the Single Academy Trust and what the options are, why there is a perceived negativity that I'm seeing and Jeff and I are seeing in the press, and why that is. A little bit disappointing, but we want to discuss that and move the conversation forward, really. So I'll just let Jeff introduce himself, then he will hand over to Kerry, and I'll start off with some questions that we've got.
Thanks, Mark. Morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Marshall. Brief introduction as to who I am. I've been a governor for 28 years, 29 years this year. I've been chair for 22 years. One of the first primaries to become an academy, and the academy that I'm the chair at is the one that's in the image behind Kerry as we speak at the moment. So we've been in academy now since the 1st of January 2011. I'm also MD of J&G Marshall Limited, which is a specialist academy conversion support company, where not only do we do conversions, we've done 279 conversions from North Cumbria to the Isle of Wight. We also conduct MAT growth audits, we conduct MAT MOTs, we have a MAT merger service, and we also have a brokering service finding MATs for schools and schools for MATs. I've also been a national leader of governance for 8 years. I train governance, I mentor chairs, and I conduct external reviews of governance, both in the maintained sector and academies. I'm also a fellow of the Chartered Governance Institute, a fellow of the Chartered Management Institute, and I'm also MD of Marshall Professional Development, which is a CPD coaching company and training company that works predominantly in schools, but also in companies. Over to you, Kerry.
Well, my introduction is much shorter than that. My list is not quite as long as your repertoire there, Jeff. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you so much for having me along today. My name is Kerry Hart. I'm the head teacher of Park Road Academy. We are a single academy trust. I've been the head teacher here just coming up for 9 years, but also part of the senior leadership team when we did convert back in January 2011.
Thank you, Kerry and Jeff. As I say, my name's Mark Tadman. I'm director for School Business Services, and we provide back office services, and we work with many partners in the industry around how we can help schools become more efficient. And we're putting on we're hosting a lot of webinars at the moment. Some of you might have seen a few of them. And I put my name forward for this one basically because it really does fascinate me, this subject, and how we can discuss it. Jeff and I have had many conversations around this, and we decided that we were going to pull Kerry into this and start having some proper conversations and invite colleagues along to help us move the conversation forward, discuss options around growth, what you're being forced to do, what you're being asked to do, what you think you should do. And we're going to tap into Kerry's experience and Jeff's experience as well around what's been good, what's been bad. But we're going to start right at the very beginning. And the first question for you, Kerry, is you're a single academy trust. Why did you convert, and what were you thinking of, and what have been the benefits for you at the moment?
Well, sort of like going back now, 11 years, and I think it was based around the original reasons why schools were converting to academies, and that was freedom from the local authority and to make decisions around the budget, around finances, and really put the money back in to the school to really meet the needs of the children and the families that you have there and then, opposed to leaving the decisions to the local authority. But we did have one little push, I think, around about that time, and that was we went to the local authority with a proposal in regards to our nursery. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to increase the hours of our nursery from 7:45 to 6 o'clock. We wanted it open 42 weeks of a year, and we wanted to give flexible patterns for our working parents. So if they wanted to send their children just for an afternoon or one morning or 2 mornings a week, then we wanted to meet the needs of our families that were in our community at that time. And unfortunately, the local authority, we didn't have the support from them to sort of change the provision that we wanted to do for nursery. So that was really our push at the time, was to take control and also to increase our revenue streams. And from then, we opened full wraparound care for all the school children with age 3 to 11. And from that, it started to grow. So we have a school club, we've got our own holiday club. So that combined with the nursery income. Now we talking about sort of like the financial advantage of this was that we begin to we're invoicing around £95,000 a year on top of our early years income to run to run it the way we wanted to run, and also to top up our income, because we can all probably agree on here, if there's anything, school finances have always been topic of debate on how favourable or unfavourable they've always been towards us. So that was really the very starting point for us. And since then, we've really just hit the ground running in terms of how can we open more revenue streams into the school. We let our premises out on long and short term basis. And what then, I don't want to just sit here and talk about sort of like financial gains, but what happens here with financial gains is that you can put that money straight back in to the children, and we are the decision maker into what that money goes towards. What does that look like? How does it improve our provision? And how does it, which I think is the main drive behind anything, improve those educational standards, those outcomes for the children, and those opportunities and experiences for the children as well. For that, we've all heard the term, that broad and balanced curriculum. And I think many years ago, when we talk about broad and balanced curriculum, it was just a phrase that was bandied around. But now, really, what does that look like in our school? What does that look like in our curriculum? So, just to give you a few examples of what we have here at Park Road, is we have 2 large multi-use areas. We have an outdoor classroom, we have an indoor tree house, and we have laptops for every child. And that's just to name a few of the things which we've made the decision on to spend and enhance the provision that we have here at Park Road. So that's it in a nutshell of why we went down that path at that time.
Freedom of choice, eh? Yeah, that's a great answer, Kerry. And I'm going to ask a couple of other questions now in the early part of the webinar, just that might come across as negative, but please, we're trying to sort of uncover and move forward with being positive. So how have you viewed all in the education media some of the negativity around the end of the Single Academy Trust? And we're here to champion Single Academy Trust. Some of the best schools that we work with are Single Academy Trusts, and I'm a little bit disappointed in that there's always this move to do something next. What's your view of the negativity in the education media?
Well, I echo disappointment and quite saddened actually, because of the work that goes in to successful schools, not just Single Academy Trust, but all schools that are successful. And I think for me, I've always believed that growth was about sustainability. And I might be wrong, but when we talk about growth and maths, it's always based on the sustainability of a school. But we've proved that we can sustain and exist outside of the local authority, because we have done so as a Single Academy Trust for 11 years now. So I don't know whether it's intentionally to sort of overlook the successful Single Academy Trust, or whether it's a political agenda, why we're overlooking the Single Academy Trust. But for really, to think really deep about it is the fact that, the growth, there's no evidence really that bigger is better.
Mm.
And I have been searching for evidence that possibly links Key Stage 2 results of a primary school to number of schools in a trust. And are those Key Stage 2 results better? And I'm yet to find that evidence to support that. So, I think one of the things is I'd love for somebody who's in this agenda of the bigger the better. I mean, I remember Gavin Williamson saying, didn't he say that SATs were no longer viable,
Yeah.
a few months back, and I would have loved to invite him in, and my door was open for him to have a chat, to see our school, to talk to our children, to talk to all our stakeholders, and actually see that sustainability of a Single Academy Trust is doable and viable.
Absolutely. And Jeff, as someone who's converted more schools to academy than anyone I know, and probably the most in the country, and as chair of governors of Kerry's School, what's your view on the DfE and how they're sort of supporting this as well? The movement. Why is that, do you think?
Mark, you and I talk about this. We've talked about this for years. We've had Single Academy Trusts for over 11 years now. We've had them a lot longer than multi-academy trusts, and yet there is this still powers that be feeling that Single Academy Trusts lack viability. I've heard RSCs talk about sweet spots of 12 to 20 schools being viable. Well, 12 to 20 schools is a mini local authority. And there is no proof, as Kerry says, that actually bigger is better. Single Academy Trusts have been around for a lot longer than multi-academy trusts. It was telling last year when I sat in an NGA forum about Single Academy Trusts, when Emma Knights actually said this is the first time we've ever done a Single Academy Trust forum, and she apologised for it because we've had them for 11 years, but we've had numerous MAC forums. And when I talk to DfE insiders, it's always this viability word that comes out. Single Academy Trusts are not viable because you get economies of scale and bulk purchasing power the more schools you have in the trust. It isn't about the number of schools in your trust. It's not about the number of pupils in your trust. It's about the skill set you have sat around the table running the two things an academy trust is, which is a place of teaching and learning, and it's a business, which in reality is the same as a maintained school. It's the same as a multi-academy trust. It's the same as a single academy trust. But if single academy trusts are doing things correctly and having positive outcomes for children and their locality, then why does the DfE and the powers that be in the RSC constantly and consistently talk about lacking viability? And in my humble opinion, it becomes more about the Regional Schools Commissioner being able to deal with, say, 15 CEOs who cover 300 schools than it is for an RSC to deal with 300 single academy trusts. So therefore, is it about fitting the schools into someone else's template rather than building the template around the school and actually championing the fact that the school is the beating heart of the locality? Leo Recrudas talks about schools being civic structures, quite rightly, because we are the beating heart of the locality. But it's this size becomes more important than anything. Now, is that then saying that a 5-school MAT is 5 times better than a single academy trust? Is it then saying that a single academy trust future looks to join in that 5-school MAT? Or can we actually now start actually having a conversation about the 5-school MAT joining the single academy trust because the single academy trust has done something properly? Now that's mixing that up because I don't have those conversations with RSC offices around the country, Mark. And you and I have had that conversation about, is it all about size and increasing the number of schools in trusts and reducing the number of trusts off the board? And currently it looks that way.
Absolutely. And Kerry, if I may ask you a question about the pressures under, and sorry, Chair of Governors, the pressure to expand from a single academy trust. I mean, where do you first look for your obligations? Is it the stakeholders in your school? It's not someone in Whitehall, is it? It's the parents. I mean, what's your view on that one? I mean, that could be quite sensitive, but I'm sure I know the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think with any single academy trust, if you know, in terms of the pressures, and we've had many conversations, because like you said, there are pressures out there. We're all waiting for the new white paper to be released in a couple of, hopefully, weeks, not, you know, if a couple of months' time. And you have to have those conversations. We've had, as a board, many conversations about growth, but you have to be operational and strategically ready in order to grow. And I think those are the first conversations that you've got to have. We talk about capacity a lot, and I think that's really important, is that you've got to have that capacity in order to take on more schools, or to, you know, to join that trust, because like what you said, the stakeholders are really important to us. And I think with any kind of growth, you have to ensure that school that you are in, that we are accountable for right now today, is not detrimental. There's no detrimental impact to the children, to the families that have had trust in you for so many years. And I think that the important part is to be able to grow sustainably, and I keep on coming back to that word, but also at the same time as maintaining and improving performance of your school. And I think that is the real challenge that most schools that go into a multi-academy trust have. I think, you know, transparency is going to be a real key to all stakeholders on the journey as well, and to bring them along with you. If I'm going to be honest, I feel that parents can be easily confused around the vocabulary that's used in academisation. So I think we've got to bring them along with us on the journey of any type of growth. And even in those very first stages, I think it's not enough for a single academy trust or multi-academy trusts that are growing to just send that letter out to parents. I think you've got to have that open forum so they have complete understanding and trust. And it goes back to what Jeff said, it's the people around the table that make. Let's remove all the labels. So let's get rid of maths, that whatever you may be, let's remove the labels and let's call a school a school. What makes a school successful? It's the people around that table, it's the leadership, it's the integrated thinking, it's the shared vision, and it's the shared ambition. And, you know, with that, then you're going to have a successful school. And, you know, I think it goes down to, you know, really the integrated thinking with like-minded people, and I think that's the key.
Definitely.
Mark, sorry, Mark, as Chair of Governors on that same question, as Chair of Governors and Chair of the Trust and a Trust member, for me it's firstly about understanding exactly who we are and what we do well, and what is a non-negotiable if we grow or we move somewhere else, is we cannot take our eye off the ball in our home school. But then it's actually not just self-assessment, it's actually verifying that with external assessment, and actually understanding who we are and what our journey looks like, but understanding what the landscape looks like as well. And then once you've done all of that, that informs any growth plan. And that growth then has to consider whether or not you're looking to merge, you're looking to grow yourself, you're looking to actually then get a number of single academy trusts around the table. And then you've got to set what that growth looks like, who, how, why, and when. And then on top of that, you've then got to start bringing in the word mergers. So it all starts from the people and the actual home school. And all of a sudden, you're now talking about a massive business model. And you have to do that because that's what the DfE's landscape has pushed single academy trusts to consider.
Absolutely. I mean, we at School Business Services see a lot of the single academy trusts that we work with as some of the best schools that we work with, as I've already said. And that is a massive benefit, firm foundations of, you know, that the team there is on board, the education is good, so you can move forward. But what are the options going? What is the next step? And I hate to use a business term, but I come from business, and the term mergers and acquisitions and risk management are all very sensible terms to use in this sort of conversation. What do you get, Kerry, Jeff, from DfE RSCs to say, okay, this is where you are at the moment. These are your options. Is it that simple? Do they come and do they talk to you, the RSCs, and say, right, these are your next options, or are they happy with what you're doing?
The RSC doesn't know what I look like, or doesn't even know where the school is.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Door's always been open.
Yeah.
Wide open. Come and have those conversations. But I'll hand that over to Jeff, and he'll talk a little bit more about that.
And this is where Mark and Kerry both know that there are some times where I can come across as contentious. It's because I passionately believe in what people are doing. When they're doing it well, it should be recognised, and when it's not being done well, it should be recognised. But in my opinion, the reason we've not heard from our Regional Schools Commissioner, yet we've heard from the Secretary of State, and Kerry gets letters regularly from the Secretary of State saying well done on how you've done, complimenting us on what we do in our school, Single Academy Trust. In my humble opinion, the reason the Regional Schools Commissioner doesn't do that is because it goes against what our Regional Schools Commissioner's viewpoint is, which is a sweet spot of 12 to 20 schools. Now, the minute a Regional Schools Commissioner accepts and understands that a Single Academy Trust can succeed in happy children with a pastoral care, with all the support, well-being, same with parents, same with staff, is the minute it kind of detracts from the RSC's message that viability isn't in that Single Academy Trust. So the easiest thing for an RSC to do is ignore the Single Academy Trust that's actually succeeding, rather than learning from what a Single Academy Trust does and can do. And Baroness Berridge last year said these words: Single Academy Trusts are sat in splendid isolation. It was a red rag to me, and I contacted Baroness Berridge. I got an apology that didn't use the word apology or sorry. But in reality, what it was it made it look like Single Academy Trust never wish to work with anyone else. They don't wish to collaborate. They don't wish to grow. We always want to sit here. Now, I'm not saying that all Single Academy Trusts will collaborate and work externally. There are some Single Academy Trusts that I actually currently work with who will always be a Single Academy Trust because it's always about us. I'm not so sure that's the right way, but that's what some people will do. But in reality, you can't have someone like an academies minister saying words that actually generalising that all Single Academy Trusts are sat in splendid isolation. It just can't be allowed. So in reality, why RSCs and the DFE is because it fits the popular narrative, and the popular narrative at the moment is we will all be in a family of schools, and a family of schools is a multi-academy trust. What we need to do is learn what Single Academy Trusts have done well, because it's people who succeed Single Academy Trusts, it's people who fail Single Academy Trusts. It's people who fail MATs, and it's people who succeed MATs, and it's people who fail local authorities, and it's people who succeed local authorities. It comes down to the people, not the number of schools in a trust.
100%. A school is a school, as Kerry said earlier, and if the school is performing on every level, what is the issue here? That's my view. What is the problem? Why don't we just continue being very good and pleasing everybody, including the pupils that get a great education, which I thought was the idea here. But Jeff, as I say, I go back to you've converted more schools than anyone I know. So when you sit down with a maintained school or a group of maintained schools looking to convert, you've got more experience than most people. What do you start with? What's your opening line about? Okay, and I know you don't convince people to convert, which would be easier for you, but what do you actually say if they say, Jeff, we're looking to convert to Academy? With all this experience that we've just discussed in the first half hour, and your job is to help them, what would you start with in terms of due diligence and planning?
Matt, you're absolutely spot on. We never ever say that becoming an academy is the right thing for you to do, because the only people who can make that decision are the maintained schools governing body or Ofsted. The very first question, this is going to sound twee, and I apologise if it comes across as twee. The very first question we ask a maintained school in their journey is effectively the golden circle. It's Simon Sinek's why. Tell me why. Why are you doing this? How are you going to improve people's lives? We asked ourselves the same question, Kerry, didn't we, 11 years ago? How are we? What does it mean to be an academy? How can we improve people's lives? And tell me tell us what your plans are to improve your people's lives, your locality, and people's futures for the next 125 years. If you don't have a plan, we then have to go back to that plan or we walk away. Because it's pointless just saying, you know, and the reasons change. Our reasons, what Kerry eloquently said what our reasons were. Over the last few years, those reasons have changed. Now Maintain schools are saying, well, we don't want to be the last man standing. Our authority is gone. The authority's quality of SLA has gone. The cost has gone up. All the quality people in the local authority have left, set up as consultants from their box room. We're now the only school in the cluster that isn't an academy, so we now have to go. And that comes across as a negative. But in reality, it can also be a positive in actually making a decision for the future rather than burying people's head in the sand. We talk about due diligence, and due diligence should be done far better than it is. I was talking to a head teacher a few months ago of a cluster, 4 group wanting to do it, and their belief you can do due diligence in an afternoon. And it's just not right. You cannot do due diligence in an afternoon. You do it properly.
Well, you can do it, but it wouldn't be very good, would it?
It wouldn't be very good. But the first question they asked Mark is, why are you doing it? And the reason was, well, you know, it seems like a good idea because this is where the DfE wants it. Now, that's okay. It's an acceptable reason, as long as you then come up with a plan of how you're going to do it properly. What does it look like? How are you going to create something bigger than the sum of the parts? And how are you going to improve people's lives? And once you start delving into that and making people think, is where you actually start getting the real credibility about creating something that is viable and robust for the future. And it doesn't matter the number of schools in that trust. It's about the desire to leave the place better than we found it, which is what all of us in governance, that's our job. Leave a legacy, leave the place better than we found it.
Definitely, and I suppose, Kerry, you're lucky to have Jeff as your chair of governors with, or, well, he's shaking his head, and I know his house is in the actual background of your school, which I find hilarious. But I suppose, I mean, with the emphasis on people and team and producing the best education as possible, do you feel positive about the future in the next 2-3 years, or are you looking at actually making a change?
I think, you know, when we talk about the reasons for, you know, growing from a SAT to a MAT, our topic of conversation always starts with, well, where are we today? And that echoes what Jeff said, is what are we providing the children that walk through our doors today? Is this a good round quality education and provision for the children? And then we look at all the other factors as well. So you look at your finances, you look at your governance, and you look at the infrastructure of your school, you look at that, you know, the capacity of your team. So when we have those conversations, you know, you look at outcomes for learning, and we have those conversations, and we're in a good place. So we reluctantly continue with the conversation, if I'm going to be honest, about growth, and why we start to talk about growth and why we have a growth plan in place is due to the change in climate, the landscape of the academisation, and am I positive about it? Now, I think that if we go down the right route on a multi-academy trust, and we link with schools who, like I've said time and time again, are like-minded, and we've done thorough due diligence on it, then what we ask is, can we provide, you know, what's the benefit to our children? What's the educational benefit to our children going to a multi-academy trust? And if we are sharing those same visions and that same philosophy with other schools, then I do believe that a multi-academy trust can be successful. I don't believe you need to walk down the route of, you know, getting 12 to 15 schools and creating, you know, small local authorities. But I think multi-academy trust can be successful. It can be successful, but whether I'm positive about it or not is sort of, the jury's out at the minute, because I feel like if we go down that route at the moment, it's more of being forced rather than organically grown. So even though I believe success of a MAP can be achieved, being forced down that route, I feel I have, like, I'm going to put it this way, I have some healthy restraints. If I think that's the only way I'm going to pop it.
And this leads on to a question that we've had that was asked before the conference from Lee Crew from Kidgate Primary School, where he says, do you think it will become a requirement in the near future for a SAT to become part of a MAT, i.e. you will be told? Do you think, I mean, I'm not so sure myself. What's your view on that? And I suppose, Jeff, you can add to that as well.
So it's banded around, isn't it, time and time again, and I think it comes full circle. So we read that the agenda is for all schools to be in a multi-academy trust, so we'll see no more single academies and we'll see no more empty mats, and that's the vision. And then a few months or revised slightly, and the revision is, yes, we want it to go that way, but there's not going to be pressure, and somehow this is organically going to happen, that we're all going to fall into these multi-academy trusts, and we're all very happy and we're all very positive about it, and everything's going to be all very successful, and that's just going to sort of like bide with time. And then in the blink of an eye, a new article appears or a new publication, and the pressure's on again. And a date set, possibly, that by 2026 all schools will be in a multi-academy trust. So at the moment, it's sort of like, yes, it's spoken of that there's a possible pressure and there's a possible force, and then the foot's taken off the pedal a little bit, and actually single academy trusts, you can relax. And then it's back on, so it's just this cycle, I feel, at the moment, in terms of the message that we're getting across from the government. So Jeff might know a bit more, or mine's just like a head teacher's view of the messages that are given to me as a leader of a single academy trust, and for me to try and make some sense, or to put some long-term plans in action.
I think if you look at the trajectory of the landscape, years ago, most of us who were single academy trusts on this call, we could convert as a single academy trust. That stopped years ago. So you can't now, as a single maintained school, go to a head teacher board, apply to be a single academy trust. You can't now apply to be an empty mat. In fact, I can't find any of the 8 regions now where I can get anything less than 4 schools creating a multi-academy trust, get into head teacher board. So that trajectory has gone from 1 to, in some regions, even now 5 schools. There are a couple of regions who now saying 5 schools or more coming, or you actually look at joining existing mats. Now that's actually, again, a blinkered view from a regional schools commission, thinking they may have too many mats in their region, so why don't we grow these mats? But if you look at the trajectory, if you look at what potentially is going to happen in the white paper, 3 things that DfE insiders are telling me is, 1, a big push on more schools joining families of schools, which is maintained schools going into mats. It is taking number of trusts off the board, which is single academy trusts and empty mats, and that won't necessarily be the outstanding ones. It might be the ones that have gone RI, and I know a number of RI schools that have actually had that conversation, who are SATs now, actually asking them to consider moving into a MAT. And of course, if you've got a struggling single academy trust, it's easier pressure to be put on that trust to actually join an existing multi-academy trust than it is an outstanding or a good school. But the likelihood is it will happen. And the third thing that we are hearing in the white paper, it could be part legislation. You'll all remember the last white paper in 2016, Nicky Morgan. You'll all be in a MAT. The outcome of that, she took death threats and social media. That's how emotive this was.
It wasn't from me.
And it wasn't from parents. We then had what the unions called the U-turn, which the DfE called the Z-turn. Direction of travel, you'll all be in a MAT. We're going to dial back on it, but direction of travel, you'll still be all in a MAT. So it was a Z-turn. And what happens is, what we're hearing is, there is a consideration about part legislation in the new white paper. Now, if you look at, and Paul Dale's on the screen, Paul, you're in Stoke, you look at how many schools are in Stoke, 90 odd, they're down to about 11 maintained. It's local authorities like that who cannot, in all good conscience as a local authority, can continue maintaining schools with a budget that's gone down in austerity, and because most schools have gone into the academy sector. And Nadeem Zahawi was considering using part legislation for those authorities where the vast majority are academies, forcing the others into it. Now that assumes then that single academy trust will always have to merge into a MAT. What we don't have is a conversation, an open conversation around why can't some single academy trusts and empty MATs get round the table and consider creating a multi-academy trust, because we're all coming at it from the same perspective, and still be a founder school in a new venture. We don't have that conversation. We make this assumption that if pressure is applied and it will ramp up with the new white paper, what it assumes is that a single academy trust will have to go to a multi-school, multi-academy trust and say, can we join? If that's right for you, not a problem. If it isn't, then it shouldn't be done. Because I'm sure there's lots of people on this call who are saying they do not wish to lose control, lose autonomy, go into a multi-academy trust where you are just a trading style of a trust that you don't know, stick of rock, you're exactly like every other school. That's got to be wrong. We have to protect the identity and the ethos and champion the successes of a maintained school, of a single academy trust, of an empty MAT and a small MAT, whatever the journey, the end destination looks like, given the fact that we now have this powers that be mentality that we'll all be in families at school, which is just another name for a man.
Yeah, I can see how it's dressed up, and the word family is obviously highly relevant. But you're right, absolutely, and it is a little bit disappointing that there's this tidal wave of information coming, but without any sort of information that backs it up to say why, what, how, and how it's going to benefit individual schools. Changing subject slightly, onto local authorities and how this was a ripple effect. Now it's a bit like a tidal wave becoming a tsunami of how local authorities are going to handle schools leaving their services, and it has a positive and a negative, but mainly a negative effect on local authorities that are being asked to support schools that they're not equipped to do, they're not being trained, there's no investment, all them things. It's not helping schools, is it, with their decision making either, when the local authority is under so much pressure.
Yeah, that's right, Matt. But there are some local authorities who've actually grasped the academy sector and changed the relationship they have with those academies back to one of, we provide a service, and if we provide that service which is quality and competes in the open market, would you stay with us? Well, yes, because we've been with you for the last 50 years. Or there's those authorities that say, well, you're leaving us, we're going to lose more money. Why are you going to the dark side? And in that case, then we don't want to see you ever again. And again, it comes down to perceptions. But unfortunately, in life, I'm old enough now to know that perception becomes reality. And the perception of some authorities is it's a them and us situation. It isn't. It just changes the relationship we have with a local authority. And we've got to do what's right for the school, not what's right for the locality, for the local authority. Sorry, we have to do what's right for the individual school that we are governors or head teachers of. If that makes us selfish, I'll take that on the chin.
Yeah, I mean, we see it at School Business Services where we're filling a gap for the local authority and they're brokering our services to be the academy section of their team, which is great for us, and we can help. But I think there's also a lot of time that they've got to do to vet companies like us and ensure that we're as good as what we need to be able to deliver the services. So again, it's more time, it's more investment. So there's a lot of turbulence out there at the moment, isn't there? Which there seems to have been for a long time.
Yeah.
Bex, you got your hand up.
Yeah, really pertinent question from Ian Cotswold. Unfortunately, he has had to drop, but just while we're on the topic of local authorities, Ian asked, what, if anything, do single academy trusts envy in local authority support? Is there any part of that support that they would like?
I've got to say that actually I think we have the best of both worlds being a single academy trust. The offer from the local authority on all their services still stands for us. And I go along to all the head teachers conferences. I'm invited to all of those. I think the understanding of local authorities in relation to academies has definitely grown over the years, and I've seen a change in that. I remember speaking to Mark not long ago and said, when I used to go to head teacher conferences and when we first became a MAT, we were one of the first primaries in the country, remember, to convert to a single academy trust. And I remember sitting there at the first conference and every other line was, this might not apply to you because you're an academy. And this might, I don't know if this is you because you're an academy. And, you know, I became sort of like the centre of attention. Then, you know, people didn't sit next to me anymore on the table because they're like, well, I don't know if what we're going to talk about applies to you. And the answer is yes, it applies to us. If it applies to a school, it applies to us. And I think their sort of relationship with academies has changed over the years, and there is collaboration. But like what Mark was saying, they are becoming more of a broker to other services. And that's our choice. If we feel and that's the great part of being an academy, if we feel they have a particular offer, which is going to benefit our staff or, you know, or children in the school, or is the best price on a certain product that they're offering or a service, then we'll choose them. And we go down that route. We'd still have the option. There's nothing that is closed off to us. If we would like their school improvement service, we can buy into that. If we don't, we can buy into another one from a different local authority that maybe offers a better service. So not only do we have our local authority as an option, but actually we have all our neighbouring local authorities as an option as well to buy into. So I think best of both worlds definitely still stands for me.
That's great. Excellent. Jeff, a couple of things. We're going to open up some questions in a minute, but you and I have talked many times about our sort of how we come up with a strapline to help and planning and with schools and academies and trusts, and we come up with money vision people a couple of years back, and we could never quite agree on what comes first because we don't think any of them come first or second or third because they're all equally as important. But I mean, your business does very much focus on the people side of things, and I think we're sort of leaning towards that. If you've got everyone around the table that is of a like-minded opinion and the values are all aligned, then it's a great place to start with a team that says we're going to achieve this. That becomes your vision, and then the money side, the finance side, will stack up behind the people and the vision. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I mean, one of the things I say is if you have the right people with the right mindset, which is important, if you have the right people with the right mindset and the right skill set sat around the table making the right decisions for the right reasons, the decision making will be better, and better decision making leads to better outcomes. Mm. So it comes from decision making. It comes from the people, but it also comes from the people of actually being open and honest and truthful about what they're trying to do and their limitations and their skill sets, and actually stepping up to the plate. And the real paradox here is that what we have in education, we have skilled CPD'd operational staff like Kerry, you know, who we put a lot of effort into to ensure that, you know, her CPD is right, and Kerry does for our staff. And what we then do is we don't make it a legal requirement to sit induction for trustees, members and governors, and we don't make it a legal requirement to have CPD, ongoing CPD, but the very transient volunteer group who are making the decisions. And we've got to join that up. We have to join the operational with the strategic far better than education has done in decades. Mm. But in reality, it is money vision people, as we said. But for me, it always comes back to you can't have the right vision with the wrong people. You can't have finances done well with the wrong people. You can't have data outcomes with the wrong people. So it comes back to the very core of having the right people sat around the table with the right skill sets, making the right decisions.
And that's how you call that's how, sorry, Kerry.
Sorry, you know, I think one of the privileges of a head teacher is that we sit on strategic and operational. And I think to really successfully, seamlessly join that collaborative thinking between those two, you know, between the strategic and the operational is really important. And I don't know if anybody's on this meeting today, and they might be sat there as a head of a maintained school or the head of a single academy trust. And I just wanted to sort of like share my honesty, is that there's fear. This fear of going into a multi-academy trust who are not like-minded. And I don't know if anyone else shares those feelings, and you know, if they don't and share those same values and philosophies and the ethos. And I think that's the main fear factor of maybe maintained schools going into multi-academy trusts, successful ones, should I say, because you've built your own success and you've worked really hard to develop something, you know, really good. And there is an element of being territorial about it as well, you know, and you think if you move into the multi-academy trust world, or you're forced to merge with an existing multi-academy trust, then what autonomy are you left with? I really fear, and I've said this phrase before, the Stepford wife of multi-academy trusts, where when you go into each school, or you look even on the websites of the school, everything is identical. Now, I believe that can't happen, even if you're in a 5-minute distance from a school down the road, that you can have exactly everything the same in terms of teaching and learning policies, your curriculum. It's got to meet the children there. So I don't know, there might be people on the call today where that is their main fear, is losing autonomy, and you know, that hard work and success, a part of that's taken away because you've been overshadowed by policy. So where there's, you know, there's advantages of, you know, obviously central capabilities when you get into multi-academy trust, but that's more from a business point of view. And don't get me wrong, I think that, you know, I would welcome some of those business distractions from the head teacher, maybe more centralised, and I could focus even greater on the teaching and learning of the children. So that obviously is welcome, but there's certainly a fear there, and I'm going to be honest, and I'll share that with people on the call today. That's one of the trust.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff and I have had some experiences in the past where, I mean, just to back up what you were saying, Kerry, where a school at the top end of the road and a school at the bottom end of the road forming an academy trust, they don't know each other. There was an assumption that they would know each other, they would be friends, they'd have the same vision, they'd all be on board, they'd be, yeah, let's go and create this multi. Well, that just wasn't the case, and it fell apart so quickly because there was no people planning. There was no away day. Let's go and see what we're going to go and do. Let's have an afternoon to go down, I don't know, go to the park and to talk about what we're going to do, what we're achieving, what our vision is. Let's ensure everyone's on board. Let's just make sure that we're all here for the same reasons. Otherwise, in any merger and acquisition on the planet, it doesn't tend to go very well.
And that conversation's got to be had even before you start your due diligence, before you start really getting in to the nitty gritty of it all. Conversations with the people who are going to be involved has to take place.
I think we're going to have to take some questions, Becky, aren't we?
Yeah, David Cobb has put a comment in which is absolutely backing up what Carrie was saying. Is, I'd agree that a single academy trust can be successful and sustainable, but has a greater risk of key staff turnover and will find it harder to achieve economies of scale. I don't think they are as big as some people tend to think anyway. My concern of staying as a SAT, though, is if I project forward 20 years and imagine we're surrounded by mid-sized MATs, we're in London, so lots of schools all around us, we will regret staying as a SAT for too long, and while we might have an optimum business model for now, it could be completely wrong for 10 to 15 years time and impossible to change by then.
What a great question. Jeff, I think that's you.
Yeah.
And that's completely understandable, that mentality. I have that mentality that actually what's right for a single academy trust now isn't necessarily what's right this time next year, because every school goes up and down, up and down, up and down, and sometimes we can't control what we can't control. And if we can't control the landscape, if we can't control the DFE, if we can't control the change in government, if we can't control an RSC, then in reality, sometimes we have to be reactive. So I'm not talking about all single academy trusts circling the wagons and saying, let's fight progression. What I'm saying is, if it's working at the moment, it's working at the moment, but always have a plan B. And it comes back to, Mark, you asked me what options do schools face all the time. You ask me these questions, and we'll come to that in a minute. But Yeah, and what I'm saying is, if it's right for a single academy trust to consider joining an existing multi-academy trust, then absolutely fantastic, as long as it's thought through and the choice has been right and you've considered all other options. If the current option is stay as you are because it's working, then that's fine as well, as long as you consider the others. But but reacting in education is what we always do. We can be proactive, but we have to have a plan B. It's not just saying we've got one option and that's it and sticking to it. We have to have a number of options. And if that is right, I firmly believe our school will not be a single academy trust in the next 4 years, 5 years, let alone 10, 15 years, solely because of the way the landscape is going and what we know about what's coming.
I think there's an element, isn't there, also about schools, you know, discussing that, you know, let's take control of it before we are forced and before we don't have choice. So do we use this time in the next sort of 5 years or so to build up that growth and to create, like what Jeff said, to have conversations with other single academy trusts and to take control of it ourselves. So I guess that's a part of being a leader of a single academy trust at the moment, thinking, well, if we're all going to be, you know, in a multi-academy trust at some point, whether that's in the next 5 or 10 years, do we take control over it ourselves and be in charge of our own destiny and what that looks like before the RSC comes knocking on your door and said, congratulations, you're joining this, Matt, and good luck to you all.
Yeah, there's some questions in the chat as well about the RSCs and what their role is from Miss Amex. So what is the RSC's role in this? I mean, are they helping? Are they providing? I know you said you haven't met yours, Kerry. I mean, Jeff, you've got more interaction with the RSCs. What's their role?
Again, this is something that I'm just going to throw a grenade on the table there. That for me, what I ask, what is the RSC role regularly, and I get different answers in different regions, and that worries me, because we have 8 regional schools commissioners, we have 1 national schools commissioner, and the national schools commissioner cannot overturn a regional schools commissioner's decisions, because the regional schools commissioners are appointed by the Secretary of State for Education, not the National Schools Commissioner. So so part of the role of a regional schools commissioner is to support the academy conversion the academy program. Others is to actually is to look at schools that are struggling or starting to fail and finding the right home for them. Now that's fine, but regional schools commissioners are civil servants on a 5-year contract. And in reality, what happens then is, if you look at historically what's happened to the RSC role, the RSC who leaves that RSC role, the first thing that they end up in is a CEO of a MAT. And is that a stepping stone? Because some people are now wondering if the RSC role is a stepping stone to actually go on to be a CEO of a multi-academy trust. The RSC role should be under consideration, and it should be revamped where everyone knows what the role is, rather than you get a different mixed message whatever region you're in, so it becomes a postcode lottery. Because one RSC role will be I'm trying to improve all schools, another one will be it's trying to increase the academy's program. You can't have a difference of opinion in a role that is the same role. So at least let's get some consistency in this. And at least let's get the National Schools Commission and the Secretary of State for Education to redefine what the RSC role is, so we all know, rather than just themselves knowing.
Definitely. I mean, we've had a lot of interest in this webinar, and we probably could have done with another probably 3 or 4 hours, but we will follow this up with another one in probably 3 or 4 weeks, where we can expand upon the conversation, because I don't think we're going to get to all questions, are we, Becky?
No, we're not. There's just one that I'd like to probably finish off with. Claire Skinner has put in a great comment earlier and a 3-part question, but I'm just going to focus on the one bit that says, to Kerry, why have you declined to develop your own multi-academy trust?
Decline. Oh, I want to say decline. I haven't had an offer.
So actually, part of the question was, have the RSC contacted you about start it, other schools joining you, but you mentioned earlier that they didn't know who you were.
Yeah. So no, I've had nothing to decline. Or so I think the lack of conversation with the regional schools commissioner is sort of like the answer to that question. And I think whether sort of like declining in the future is not something that would be on the cards, because it's got to be right. So if Jeff and I were to have some conversations with the regional schools commissioner, and they were looking at us maybe to possibly start a MAT with Park Road Academy, from being that central school, that hub, should I say, to that multi-academy trust, and what we used to refer to as sort of like lead school, then that's definitely on the cards for conversation, because it's about what I said before. It's about taking control. So if those conversations were to arise with the possible building of a multi-academy trust, Jeff and I certainly wouldn't be turning down that conversation, and we would take that conversation with some really true thought and consideration if we were approached to do so. But it's definitely a lack of communication from the regional schools commissioner with SATs that are successful. And I think from my view as a head teacher, I've not heard from the regional schools commissioner. In some respect, for me, that's if you don't hear anything, you're doing a good job. From my idea of the understanding of what their role is, and in order to sort of focus on those schools that require improvements, and those schools that need to be joining a MAT in order to survive and be sustainable in the long term. So no news from them was good news to me.
Bex, we have spoken to other schools about growing. We've spoken to a number of schools about growing over the last few years. So we're not sat there in splendid isolation that Baroness Berridge accused us all of. So but I'm sure that there'll be single academy trusts and there'll be empty mats on this call who will have had the same questions and the same demands that we had from other schools looking to join us. So a couple of years ago, we had a school that had gone into measures who then wanted to find a home. They came to me, asked, could we join your trust, Jeff, but we need an answer in a week because we've got to go back to the RSC. By the way, we want the same number of trustees that you've got. We want the same number of members that you've got. We don't want to pay a top slice that's any more than the multi-academy trust down the road that's asking. They came to a trust that had been operating for 9 years at that point at a high level and demanded parity, this maintained primary school. And when we said, we can't give you an answer in a week because it'll take us months to do due diligence on you to see how we can improve you and see what you're bringing. And when you come in, if you've gone into measures, how do you expect to have the same number of trustees sat around the table because you wanted parity, when in reality, the Ofsted report said you were your governance was in measures. So why would you have the same number of people? You don't know what an academy is, but we've been doing it for 9 years. And there'll be people on this call who've had the same demands on them from schools wanting to join. So it wasn't us, Bex, that have said, we don't want to grow and we've actually circled the wagons. We're trying to grow. Yeah. But when we have questions and demands like that, it is a step too far to say, yes, come in, you can have the same number of trustees, and those governors who have failed that school, you can sit around the table, make decisions in the successful school. It's a step too far to have that conversation. And we need to call a spade a JCB and call out that your demands are unacceptable.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap this up, but we will be hosting another session on the same subject in probably about 3 or 4 weeks, Bex, if we can put that into the calendar. We will be sharing this video with you, and we will get back to any questions that we haven't answered. And Jeff, Kerry and my contact details will be in the email that we send out to you, and feel free to get in touch with any of us. I presume it'll be mainly Kerry that most of you might want to contact, but feel free to drop us a line, keep in contact, and we will. Have you got the other webinars available, Bex? Have you got these, or should we put that in the email that we send out?
Yeah, we'll put that in the email.
Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for their time, especially Kerry and Jeff for joining us today. Really useful. Kerry and Jeff, is there anything you want to sign off with?
No, just thanks for having us, and thank you for opening a forum up where we can talk about the Single Academy Trust and the future that it holds.
Yeah.
Mark, would you forgive me just 30 seconds of saying what options all schools on this call are facing at the moment?
Let's do it.
Because it might just actually help someone actually start figuring out what they need to do. Interestingly, the options that every single academy trust on this call are facing are the same options that are facing all maintained schools in this country. They are the same options that are facing empty mats. They are the same options that are facing small mats. They are the same options that are facing large mats. These are the key 3 options that everyone currently has. Option 1 is do nothing. If it's working well, do nothing. If your data, your finance and your governance are robust, you have a good relationship with the RSC, you have a good relationship with the authority, why make a change? But my caveat to option 1 is have a plan B, because things crop up that come at you that you cannot control, and not having a plan B will isolate you. Option 1 is do nothing, have a plan B. Option 2 is join an existing larger multi-academy trust. My caveat there, do your due diligence wisely and know who you are joining. Know that your school will be at their heart, their core, as all their other schools are. Option 3 is grow or create your own multi-academy trust with like-minded individuals, like-minded schools and like-minded people. My caveat there, choose your partners wisely and do your due diligence properly. Know that you can create something bigger than the sum of the parts. There is a pseudo 4th option that Gavin Williamson brought out last year, which David Carter brought out about 4.5 years ago, which is this partnership agreement. Try before you buy. That does nothing other than kick the can down the road for 12 months in making a decision. Tim, I'm seeing you nod your head. Tim Wallingford, one of the country's leading experts on SIF, you know it, we've talked about it as well. It kicks the can down the road. So I don't think option 4 is an option. I think the 3 options, option 1, do nothing, have a plan B. Option 2, join an existing bigger mat, choose your partners, choose that trust wisely, do your due diligence. Option 3, grow or create your own multi-academy trust, choose your partners wisely, do your due diligence properly.
And we could host a session alone on creating your own mat and how to go about that, couldn't we, Jeff?
And due diligence, Mark, and you and I have spoken for hours on that.
Maybe we'll get some feedback from you guys that have attended to see what you want to see next. That would be a really good idea. We can talk all day, every day. It stops us doing any other work, which is really good. I want to say thank you very much for attending. Becky, thank you so much, you and Laura, for organising this. And I hope everyone's found this useful. There will be more to follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks,
Everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.